I'm Mia, 34, tucked away in the suburbs of Denver, Colorado. For 12 years, I've run on the gears of work, 2 jobs, no vacations longer than a long weekend, sacrificing luxuries, ignoring social outings. Every moment, every ounce of energy was poured into one dream, owning my own home. And now here I am, a modest 3-bedroom house on Chestnut Street. It's not glamorous. No pool, no view of the skyline, but it's mine. No frills, just warmth. A rose garden out back, but that doesn't matter. What matters is that this house, these walls carry my name. The deed's in my hands. I'm the one who worked late nights at the design studio, poured coffee after coffee in the cafe, skimped and saved. I didn't take loans from the bank, just sweat and overtime. This is mine. It's not just the house. It's the life I've built with the quiet strength of my own hands. The dream I held on to when the world around me spun out of control. I still remember the first time I stepped inside after signing the papers. No cheers, no celebrations. Just me. The only sound was the thud of my own heartbeat as I walked across the empty floors. No applause, no champagne, just the weight of solitude. I ran my fingers along the walls, making sure it was real. And in that moment, I knew this space, this stillness, was the peace I'd been searching for my whole life. Every morning, I wake to soft sunlight creeping through the kitchen window, make my coffee, play some jazz, and sit at my table. It's simple. It's mine. And for the first time, no one is calling my name. No one is telling me what to do. No loud voices, no arguments through the walls. Just the sound of my own breath, the soft rustle of the wind. It's a quiet I've craved for so long. The hardwood floors have a few scuffs, but I don't fix them. Each scratch is a memory. I cleaned the house myself, lifting heavy boxes alone. There's a chair by the window where I sit each evening. The golden light spills across the room, the wind whispers outside, and I sit soaking in the stillness, knowing that this space is mine. People say it must be lonely living alone. They tell me I'm not making the smart choice, that condos are better, more convenient. But I didn't want easy. I wanted freedom. To paint my bedroom however I want, to hang my mom's old photos without hearing the word tacky. To say no, to protect what I've built. I thought I would have a few years to bask in this peace. But I was wrong. A storm was coming. Quiet, subtle, and relentless. I didn't know where it would begin, but I felt it creeping in. And it all started with a phone call. Lana, my younger sister, 30, married young at 24. Her husband Derek never held a job longer than 6 months. They're the free spirit types you see on Instagram, always on some adventure. New city, new photos. They lived their lives as though the world was a canvas just waiting to be painted with their bohemian lifestyle. Lana once told me, half joking, "You live like an old lady. You're afraid of risk. I'd rather have 1 year of real living than a lifetime stuck in a kitchen with bills." I didn't argue. I didn't have to. Everyone is entitled to their own way of living. But I never imagined her version of real living would come crashing into the quiet world I'd so carefully built. 3 months ago, Lana and Derek sold their house in Phoenix, a small place they'd called home for 5 years. They bragged about the hot market, how much they sold it for, and decided to take the plunge. A year-long road trip in a van. They'd travel the country living free, no plan, just dreams. "We've got it all figured out," Mia Lana told me during a FaceTime call, her eyes wide with excitement. Boxes were stacked behind her, ready to go. Airbnb stays, working remotely, selling photos, teaching the kids from nature. "It's all set. Don't worry about us." I wasn't worried, not really. But deep down, something gnawed at me. They were diving into a dream with no net. And I knew that sooner or later, the bubble would burst. I kept watching from the sidelines, knowing any word of caution would be seen as negativity. and for the first few weeks, everything looked perfect. They posted photos of the Grand Canyon, the California coast, and a music festival in Oregon. The kids were laughing, dancing, living what looked like the perfect childhood. Lana called it real childhood, no limits, no fences. But I didn't comment. I didn't hit like. It wasn't because I didn't care. I just refused to become their safety net when that bubble inevitably popped. And sure enough, it didn't take long. 2 months into their journey, I received a call at midnight. Lana's name flashed on the screen, and before I even said hello, I could hear it. Her sobs. "Mia, we've burned through all the money," she cried, her voice broken. "Nothing's gone the way we thought. Everything costs more than we expected." I didn't know then just how much this phone call would change everything. The sobs were still in my ears when Lana spoke again, her voice cracking. "Airbnb prices are through the roof. The freelance gigs aren't paying on time. Our credit cards are maxed out. The kids are exhausted. They're begging to go home every night." I stayed silent, feeling the weight of the situation seep into the very walls of my home. I looked around my kitchen, the soft glow of the overhead light, the faint warmth still lingering in the coffee cup on the table. It was all so still. But I knew that silence wasn't a luxury I could afford much longer. "Mia, can we stay with you? Just for a few months." Lana's voice, thick with desperation, broke the silence. "I swear we won't be any trouble." I looked at the screen of my phone, feeling the lump in my throat tighten as the light from the kitchen cast long shadows across the painting on the wall, the one my mom had left me, the one I hung the day I moved in, the one I'd grown so used to seeing. It had become a part of the calm, the rhythm of my life. And I knew no matter how gently I handled this moment, my peace would shatter when I said yes. "How long exactly?" I asked, my voice betraying none of the emotions swirling inside me. "I don't know. Maybe 8 to 10 months. We just need time to get back on our feet, find work, pay off the credit cards. Mason and Evie need somewhere stable to study. Please, Mia, we won't be a burden." I sighed and set my coffee down, my mind racing. My 3-bedroom home was perfect for me. I had one room as an office, another for storage, and my treadmill sat unused in the corner. I'd carefully curated every inch of this space to reflect my need for order, solitude, and quiet. I valued structure, a predictability that helped me breathe. But then the words hit me: 2 adults, 2 kids. The very thought of it felt suffocating. Taking a deep breath, I held my ground. "Lana, I understand your situation, but honestly, I don't think living together is the right solution." The words were harder than I expected, but they came out. "I've lived here alone for nearly 6 years. I need peace to work. I have a structured routine. I can't just upend my entire life because you and Derek didn't plan properly." The silence that followed was thick, a weight on the line. Then Lana spoke again, her voice strained like she was trying to swallow her anger. "So you're saying no?" I softened my tone, but there was no mistaking the firmness in it. "Not exactly. I'm willing to help. I can cover part of your rent for a few months. I have friends in real estate who can help you find a decent place nearby that fits your budget." I thought I was being fair, helping them without sacrificing everything I had worked so hard for. But Lana didn't see it that way. "Do you know how we've been living these past 2 weeks, sleeping in the van at gas stations? Evie's had a fever for days. Mason cries every night asking to go home. And you, the only one in this family with a house big enough, you just turn your back like it's nothing." Her voice rose with each word, and I could hear Derek in the background, his voice low and muttering, but it was the sound of Evie's soft cough that hit me hardest. A part of me ached. I loved those kids. They were my family. But I couldn't let emotion cloud reason. "I'll transfer $2,000 to you tomorrow," I said, my voice unwavering. "Use it for a security deposit on a rental. I'll ask my friend to help you find a place nearby, but I can't let you and your entire family move in." Lana let out a bitter laugh, sharp and cold. It wasn't amused. You really are heartless. I haven't asked you for anything in 12 years, but the one time I beg you, you say no. It's not saying no, I replied, my voice firm now. It's setting a boundary. I've spent years sacrificing for others. Now I want to live my own life, and that doesn't mean I don't care. There was a long silence after that. The line went dead. I thought the conversation was over, but less than an hour later, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was my mom, Dolores. Always calm, but her words cut like knives. Mia, are you really going to let your sister and her kids be out on the street? I wasn't surprised. Not at all. I wasn't even shocked when the next morning my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. My mother called 3 times in 15 minutes. Each time, I knew what was coming. I was at the sink, my hands wrapped around the mug, like it was the only thing anchoring me to the moment when my phone buzzed again. The 4th time. I knew it was coming, but nothing could prepare me for the weight in her voice. Mia. The words were sharp, cutting through the stillness of my kitchen. I heard everything from Lana. Are you really planning to abandon your sister and her 2 kids in the middle of a crisis? I leaned back, pressing my forehead to the cool edge of the sink, my fingers tightening around the mug. It felt like the only thing keeping me steady. Mom, I began, my voice steady despite the rush of emotions bubbling up. I offered financial support. I even said I'd cover a few months of rent, but I can't let them live in my house for nearly a year without a plan. I have my own life. You know that. She inhaled sharply, the silence between us thick, before speaking again, her voice dripping with judgment. You always have to calculate everything. Always need a clear plan. Lana's not like you. She lives from the heart. She might make mistakes, but at least they're the mistakes of someone who dares to live, and you. I gripped the mug tighter, the porcelain cool beneath my fingers. Living with logic doesn't mean I'm heartless. You can't expect me to sacrifice everything just because my sister made choices without a backup. The line went quiet. Then her voice softened, but the words cut deeper than ever. You've changed, Mia. Ever since you got that house, all you think about is yourself. You should remember nothing lasts forever. One day you'll need someone, and when that day comes, don't expect anyone to open their door for you. I swallowed hard, my chest tight. I don't expect anyone to open a door for me, Mom, because I've always opened my own. And that's exactly why I value this home so much. The call ended, but the weight of her words stayed with me, lingering in the corners of the house. I thought things would settle after that, but the storm wasn't over. 2 hours later, my father called. Richard, 67. Direct. No small talk, no preamble. Just his voice, sharp and demanding. Mia, I can't believe you're refusing to help your own blood during a time like this. You're living alone in that huge 3-bedroom house, and your sister and her kids are sleeping in a car. I blinked, my thoughts scrambling. Dad, they're not homeless. They're staying in Airbnbs. They still have options. I've already sent money. I offered to help find a place, but they don't want that. They want to live in my house for free. What's the big deal? He pressed his voice tight with disbelief. It's just 10 months. I closed my eyes, my fingers brushing the edge of the countertop. Dad, don't you remember when you first graduated and Lana let you crash at her place for 3 months? Did you forget? I could almost hear his tired laugh through the phone. Those 3 months were during college in a 1-bedroom apartment. I paid half the rent. This isn't the same, I replied, my voice rising. But he wasn't listening. You're so wrapped up in being independent, you think just because you have a house and a job you can say no to everyone. But if you live like that when you fall, who's going to catch you? I paused, taking a slow breath, the air thick with the weight of it all. If I fall, it'll be because of choices I made, and I will never show up at someone's door asking them to give up their freedom to fix my mistakes. There was silence on the line, the kind of silence that screams louder than words ever could. Finally, he spoke, his voice bitter, almost resigned. "You're real proud of yourself, aren't you? But you'll learn. No matter how many houses you buy, they can't warm a life that's gone cold." I set the phone down slowly, the words cutting deeper than I wanted to admit. I rested my head on my arm, exhausted. Not angry, just tired. I'd been the responsible one all my life. The helper, the one who carried the weight. But now, the moment I set a boundary, I was the cold, ungrateful one, the selfish one. Then, the message came. From Sarah. An old classmate. Someone who still loosely kept in touch with both me and Lana. Mia. "What's going on?" Lana posted a status saying she never expected the sister she trusted most to turn her back when the family needed her. I sat down in the dim light of the living room, the glow of my phone illuminating my face as I stared at the post. The words were like a slap in the face. Sometimes the one who hurts you the most is the one you once admired. We only asked for a roof, but it turns out some hearts are colder than October frost. Dozens of comments, most familiar names, and most weren't on my side. The weight of it all settled in my chest, cold and heavy. I thought that after being bombarded by Mom, Dad, and the relentless wave of online opinions, Lana would understand that my decision was final. I had been clear. I had explained my position. I had sent money, drawn a firm line, and expected at least a sliver of respect for that boundary. But I was wrong. A week later, on a Saturday morning, I was mowing the backyard, the drone of the lawnmower, a steady rhythm that matched my thoughts. But the moment I heard a knock at the door, something in me tensed. I assumed it was the Amazon delivery. I'd been expecting a new bookshelf. But when I opened the door, I froze. There they were. Lana, Derek, and the two kids, Mason hair a mess and still blinking sleep from his eyes, and Evie clutching a battered teddy bear standing on my porch. Suitcases surrounded them like a barricade. My heart skipped a beat, but I stood there speechless. For several long seconds, Lana didn't even look uncomfortable. She was completely composed, as if this was perfectly normal. "Good morning, sis," she said, offering a faint smile that was far too casual for the situation. "I knew you wouldn't let us struggle for too long." I didn't respond right away, my mind scrambling. My gaze flicked to Derek, who gave a quiet nod before stepping back with his suitcase, not even acknowledging me. The kids stood still, wide-eyed, like they were waiting for permission to enter. "Lana, what are you doing?" I asked, my voice calm but sharp, trying to hold on to my composure. "We came to talk properly this time," she said, her tone smooth. "Last time was over the phone and things got a little tense. I knew you'd understand once you saw us in person. You've always had a soft heart." I couldn't believe it. She truly thought that after everything I would soften because of some words about a soft heart. "And you brought all your stuff just to talk?" I glanced at the suitcases. "Lana." She exhaled loudly as though I was the unreasonable one. "Mia, we're exhausted. The kids are sick. Evie's been coughing for 2 nights. I couldn't let emotion take over again, not after everything. "You want to talk in a parking lot? Or can we come in, have some water, and talk like normal people?" she pressed. I looked at them, their weary faces, the exhaustion etched into their eyes. My heart clenched when I saw Evie rubbing her eyes, but I pushed it all away, setting my jaw. "Come in," I said, stepping aside, my tone ice cold. "But just to talk, nothing more." Lana flashed a quick, triumphant smile before smoothing her expression into something sweet and familiar. They all stepped in like they had every right to, like my refusal meant nothing. Derek placed the suitcases against the wall, not once asking if it was okay, not once acknowledging me. I led them to the living room, deliberately keeping distance between us. Talk, I said, folding my arms tightly across my chest. Lana sat down on the armchair, smoothing her hair, as if she was in control of the situation. This 10 months, that's all we need. We won't be any trouble, she said, her voice smooth, rehearsed. Derek can do housework. I'll cook, clean, watch the kids. We'll keep everything spotless. You won't have to lift a finger. And after 10 months, I cut in. Lana hesitated, her gaze shifting for just a second before she spoke again. If things are stable, we'll rent our own place. If not, well, we've been keeping an eye on some cheap flights. There are deals to Arizona, so maybe we could hit the road again. I let out a dry, humorless laugh. So, after nearly a year of living in my house, you're still thinking of leaving again. If you find a cheap flight, you think that's okay. That's when Derek finally spoke, his voice quiet but steady. We're not trying to take advantage, Mia. We just thought maybe you'd be more understanding. I walked to the window, my back to them, my voice low but sharp. You sold your house with no backup plan. Blew all the money on hotels and restaurants. You didn't save, didn't invest. You didn't create any safety net for the kids, and now you're standing here knocking on my door, expecting me to rearrange my entire life to fix the consequences of your reckless choices. Lana stood up, her face flushed red with anger. So now you're lecturing me. Her voice rose, bitterness seeping through. You always think you're right, living your life stuck in the same boring loop. What's there to admire in that? We're living, we're daring, and you're just scared. I turned to face her, my gaze steady, unwavering. Daring to live doesn't mean dumping your responsibilities on someone else and calling it freedom. The tension in the room felt like a knife's edge. Evie started crying softly, her little sobs tugging at something deep inside me, but I held firm. Mason buried his face in Derek's shirt, and Derek just stared at me silent. I spoke my last words, each one a cold, final nail in the coffin. I'm not changing my mind. You have 10 minutes to pack up and leave. If you need it, I'll call you a cab. Lana stared at me, her eyes wide with shock, her face flushed with fury. But this time, I didn't flinch. Not for a second. Lana stood frozen for a few seconds before her face turned a deep red with rage. Her chest rose and fell in quick, sharp breaths, her eyes hardening, losing any trace of the pleading that had been there just moments ago. The air thickened with tension as she hissed. Now you really have changed. You never used to be this cold. You used to say you'd always be there for me. Did you forget that? I clenched my fists, but kept my voice steady. I did say that, but I never promised to carry the weight of every reckless decision you made. Reckless! Lana's bitter laugh rang out sharp and mocking. I chose to live authentically. I dared to dream. You're a ghost. Work. Come home. Lock the door. Call it stability. I turned fully toward her, the words slicing through the air. Yes, I choose stability, because I know exactly what instability costs, and because I never want to stand at someone else's door with my entire family begging to stay, without a plan in place. Derek couldn't stay out of it any longer. He stepped forward, his voice now no longer gentle like before, but laced with anger. I thought you'd be different, but turns out you've always been the type who only thinks about herself. Remember when I got married, Mom said you didn't want to pitch in because you were busy paying off student loans. Back then, you used the same excuse, prioritizing your future. Sound familiar? I stared at Derek, stunned. How dare he bring up something from nearly a decade ago? You're right. I didn't help financially back then because I was working 3 jobs to pay off my student debt. and I don't regret putting myself first during that time. That's how I built this life. And you— I took a breath, trying to steady myself. You don't get to use something I couldn't do in the past to make me sacrifice what I have now. Lana stepped closer, the distance between us closing. Just a hand's width away, she said, her voice sharp and accusing. You're being selfish. You live alone. This house is twice the size of what you need, and yet you can't spare a little space for your own blood. I stood tall, unwavering, not blinking. This isn't about space, it's about boundaries. Some people go their whole lives never setting any and then blame everyone else when things fall apart. I'm not one of them. Evie began to sob quietly in the background, her small body shaking as Derek moved to comfort her. But Lana didn't look at her. She kept her eyes locked on mine, burning with anger. If she glared hard enough, I was supposed to back down. You'll regret this, Lana said quietly, almost like a curse. One day, when you need someone, no one will be there. I gave a faint, cold smile, though something twisted in my chest. If the price of having someone stay is giving up my peace and freedom, then I'd rather be alone. Derek dragged the suitcase closer to the door, his gaze cold, filled with accusation. He looked at me like I was the villain in this story. We won't bother you anymore, he muttered. But just remember, you turned your back when your family truly needed you. I opened the door. The cold afternoon wind crept into the living room, cutting through the warmth I had tried so hard to protect. Good luck, Lana. I said, the words falling from my lips without hesitation. I mean it. She didn't reply. She just told Mason to hold Evie's hand, and they pulled their suitcases out of my house, not looking back. I stood there, my hand still gripping the doorknob, feeling a heavy emptiness settle in my chest. It wasn't triumph I felt. It was something colder, something heavier. The anger I expected wasn't there. What filled the space was a growing emptiness, cold and exhausting. But I knew one thing: if I gave in this time, there would never be a last time. After they left, dragging their luggage and their glares behind them, I thought things might quiet down. I didn't expect gratitude, but I at least hoped they would respect the boundary I'd set. But I was wrong. So wrong. Less than 24 hours later, my phone rang again. My mother. She didn't even wait for a greeting. Her voice cracked like she'd been crying. Mia, did you really kick them out onto the street? You watched those kids cry and just slammed the door. I froze in the kitchen, still holding my now cold coffee cup. My heart sank, confusion flooding my chest. What are you talking about? I didn't kick anyone out. I let them in, heard them out, and calmly said no. I didn't yell. I didn't insult. I didn't shame them. But you closed the door and you turned your back, my mom pressed. Lana said you stood there, watched the kids cry, and pointed them to the street. I was speechless, the weight of her words hitting me like a punch to the gut. I never did that, Mom, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I invited them in. We sat in the living room. Everything was said with reason. They didn't want reason. They wanted me to give up my entire space just so they could feel like I cared enough. The silence on the other end of the line was suffocating. Mom went silent after that last cruel line. Then she ended the call with a final statement that hit me harder than any of her words had before. No wonder you live alone now. Maybe it's just easier when there's no one around to disappoint. The weight of it settled on me like a stone, cold and heavy. I didn't have time to process it before my Aunt Margaret, my mom's younger sister, sent a message. She rarely reached out, only the occasional holiday card or quick check-ins. But this time, she sent a long paragraph accusing me of being cold as stone and forgetting all the times Lana had helped me back in college. Later that evening, my cousin Julia commented on an old photo I had posted weeks ago. It was a picture of me reading by the window, the books scattered across the table. Her comment hit me like a sharp jab. Books may open your mind, but they don't open your heart. I stood still reading it over and over as if the words themselves were a courtroom verdict. It felt like I was on trial in a space I was never invited to, and the decision had already been made. I tried not to react. I didn't post anything, didn't reply, but my silence only gave more fuel to the fire. To others, silence was guilt. The next evening, my phone buzzed again. It was a message from Monica, a college friend who used to be close with Lana. Mia, I don't want to interfere, but if your sister's really in that much trouble, maybe you could soften a little. It's only 10 months after all. She's family. I replied with just one sentence. Would you be willing to let a family of 4 move into your 2-bedroom apartment? Monica never responded, but that didn't stop others from sending messages. Old acquaintances, former classmates, past coworkers, people who had never stepped foot in this house, who had no idea how many years I had worked until 200 a.m. just to pay off my mortgage. Then another mutual friend, Kevin, messaged me with a more neutral tone. Mia wants boundaries. I just think if it were me, I'd compromise a little. I mean, you live alone. Living alone doesn't mean living in excess. Just because I have 3 bedrooms doesn't mean I owe anyone the other 2. This house isn't just space. It's the result of sacrifice. Years of never getting sick, never quitting, never slipping up. I earned it, and I had every right to live on my terms. Just as I sat alone in my living room, watching the messages pile up, my phone buzzed again. It was Dad. You should know the whole family's watching you, Mia. He said, his voice quieter than before, but there was a new edge to it. No one understands why you won't let your sister stay. They're calling you the Ice Queen. Have you heard that? I let out a bitter laugh. I figured they'd call me a self-made woman, but I guess around here independence is a crime. Dad didn't respond. He just hung up. I leaned back on the couch, staring at the ceiling. The peace I'd fought so hard to build wasn't being destroyed because I'd done something wrong. It was being destroyed because I refused to carry someone else's consequences. And you know what? I didn't regret it. But as the days passed, something became painfully clear to me. When you start setting boundaries, the people who used to benefit from crossing them are the ones who get the angriest. I should have seen it coming. I should have known from the way Lana looked at me that last time before walking out. Intuition tells you things before you fully understand them. But seeing it unfold, loud, clear, and public, that was different. Monday night, just after I stepped out of the shower, my phone blew up with notifications. I opened Facebook to check a message from a client, and instantly, my timeline erupted. The first post that popped up was from Lana herself. Her profile picture showed her hugging Evie, a soft sunset in the background. The caption was unusually long, heavy with emotion, and of course drenched in drama. And the only person in your family who could help chooses not to. When your kids are sleeping in a car in 40-degree weather, and the sister you once admired just stands there in the doorway, what do you learn? That sometimes family isn't a place to return to. It's the place that hurts the most. Right? Below the post were over 100 comments, and the numbers kept rising by the minute. Relatives, distant cousins, old high school friends, even people I hadn't spoken to in years, all jumping in, voicing their shock and disgust. I can't believe her sister would do that. A 3-bedroom house living alone, and she can't take in her own blood. How do you sleep at night? Each comment felt like a blade twisting and turning. What shocked me wasn't just the outrage, it was the unanimity with which Lana was supported. No one asked for my side. No one fact-checked. All they needed was a heart-tugging story and an easy villain, and I fit the role perfectly. I hadn't planned to respond. Honestly, I wanted to stay silent, let the storm blow over. But when Uncle Henry, who lives in another state and hasn't seen me in 8 years, commented, my resolve cracked. He wrote, I always thought Mia was too cold. Logic without empathy kills the soul. That did it. I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. I opened my laptop, took a deep breath, and started typing. The first line wasn't defensive, it was clarity. I'm not someone who likes airing private matters online, but if someone drags me into the court of public opinion, I have the right to speak. I wrote everything from start to finish. I had sent money offered to help with rent, invited Lana and her family into my home to talk things through, and only said no. I explained that living here for nearly a year with no clear plan wasn't something I could accept. I love my niece and nephew, I wrote, but love doesn't mean losing your personal boundaries or sacrificing your peace. I traded my youth to earn this. I didn't use harsh language. I didn't smear my sister. I simply told the truth. I didn't slam the door on 2 kids. I just refused to open it to indefinite dependency with zero accountability. I hit post at 10:00 p.m. Within 10 minutes, the first comment appeared. Finally, both sides of the story. Then another. I once let someone rent my spare room for 3 months. It was a nightmare. I get it, Mia. But not everyone was on my side. Plenty of people defended Lana, saying things like, family means sharing. Mia's still being too rigid, and it wouldn't kill her to bend a little for her sister. But this time, at least, I had a voice. At midnight, Lana texted me. The message was short, icy, and dripping with venom. You chose to humiliate me in front of everyone. Don't be surprised when they all turn on you. Then she blocked me on Facebook. I stared at the screen, numb. Not angry, not afraid, just strangely relieved. I knew it wasn't over. There were likely more messes ahead, but for the first time in days, I felt like I had control. I hadn't swallowed the truth just to let someone else rewrite my life the way they wanted. For the first time in days, I slept through the night. 3 days after I posted, the tension in the family hit rock bottom. Lana vanished from all platforms. No more posts on Facebook. No more free-spirited stories. No more dreamy comments from Derek about their healing journeys. The silence wasn't retreat. It was the calm before the next storm. That evening, while I was sorting paperwork in my home office, my phone rang. It was Dad Richard. I hesitated before answering. I knew this call wouldn't be easy, but I picked up anyway. Mia, he began immediately, his voice tight like a stretched wire. Are you really going to let this family fall apart over a post? I leaned against my desk, keeping my tone steady. Dad, I didn't post to attack anyone. I posted to defend myself. I was dragged online and misrepresented. I have the right to speak. You have the right, he said, his voice dripping with accusation. But did you really need to make a scene? Lana said you aired family business for the world to judge. Now everyone knows, and they think our family is just full of fighting. No compassion. I gave a bitter smile. And where was the compassion when everyone called me cold, selfish, emotionless, who defended me? There was a long pause on his end. Then his voice grew lower, sharper. You should have been the bigger person. You're the older sister. You have a home. Lana's struggling. 10 months isn't forever. You should have opened the door, made peace. Your mother's been crying nonstop. I clenched my teeth, my body rigid with frustration. Do you think I'm trying to tear this family apart? Or are you all just too used to me always backing down? Mia, he barked, his tone hard now. Are you talking back to your father? No, I replied, exhaling my voice, still calm but firm. I'm telling the truth. I've lived my whole life responsibly. I never asked anyone for money, never asked anyone to hold my hand. I built my life brick by brick. And the first time I draw a boundary, suddenly I'm accused of destroying the family. So, what peace only exists if I keep saying yes? If that's true, was it ever real peace? He went quiet for a long time. I didn't know what he was thinking, but I wasn't done. Not this time. I didn't hold back. I told him the truth. I did help. I sent money. I opened up, but I can't open up my entire life so someone else can move in, like it's owed to them. Lana wasn't out on the street, she just didn't want to take responsibility. And that's what I said. A heavy breath came through the line. Then he spoke slowly. I just hope you won't regret this, Mia. Some things, once they're lost, can't ever be regained. I swallowed the lump in my throat. If what I lose is the peace I fought so hard to build, then yes, I accept that I might never get it back. The call ended without a goodbye, just the sharp, flat beep of the line disconnecting. The silence that followed felt endless, echoing in the air long after. I set my phone down on the table, my hands trembling slightly. I wasn't sure if it was anger, heartbreak, or release. Maybe it was all three. Just as I was gathering my thoughts, a new email notification popped up. It was from Lana. Subject: You win, Mia. The body of the message was short, only 3 lines, but each word felt like a strike. You turned the whole family against me. Well done. I hope you enjoy sitting alone in the fortress you built from stone and rules. But remember, when you need someone, no one will be left. I stared at the words, and unexpectedly, a bitter smile crept across my face. They didn't understand. I didn't choose to live alone because I didn't need anyone. I chose to live alone because I was tired of always being the one needed but never understood. After Lana's final email, everything went eerily quiet. No more calls from Dad. No more guilt-ridden texts from Mom. Of course, not a single word from Derek or the kids. My Facebook returned to normal, but the number of people still there had shrunk. A few quietly unfriended me, while others hid my posts from their feeds. I guess in their eyes, I had become the poster woman for successful but heartless. I wasn't angry, just resigned. I felt like I was standing on an isolated island, cut off from the world. The days that followed passed in a strange, distorted kind of calm. I still went to work, still consulted with clients, still watered the plants every Tuesday evening. But something inside me had shifted. It wasn't regret. It wasn't sorrow. It was clarity. I began to see my family dynamic more clearly than ever before. As the eldest daughter, I was always told Mia has to set the example. Mia needs to be patient. Mia should give in. I did all of it without complaints, without demands. But it wasn't until I said no that the masks finally fell off. Turns out, to a lot of people, I was only lovable as long as I was sacrificing. One Saturday afternoon, I sat on the back porch with a mug of hot tea, watching the white daisies I had planted in early spring slowly lose their petals. The air was crisp, and there was something raw but freeing in the breeze brushing across my cheek. I no longer felt the need to prove to the world that I wasn't a bad person. I no longer felt responsible for healing the wounds of those unwilling to be accountable for their own pain. I just needed to breathe in my own home on my own terms in the life I had traded my youth to build. My mother still hadn't called. My father had sent only one brief text. Whenever you're ready. The family's still here. I didn't respond, not because I wanted to cut ties, but because I refused to reopen a relationship stuck in old patterns laced with one-sided expectations. I knew deep down that real connection only exists when both people are willing to grow to take responsibility and to respect each other. Without that, blood alone doesn't make us anything more than strangers. 1 month after the Facebook incident, I ran into Rachel, an old friend from yoga class. She had distanced herself from Lana's circle long ago. After class ended, she sat beside me and smiled. I read your post, she said, her voice unusually sincere. No one says it out loud, but I think a lot of people understood. They just don't have the courage to admit it. I was surprised. Rachel was never the meddling type, but there was something different in her voice that day. You know, she added, maybe people are so bothered because you were brave enough to set a boundary and they aren't. I smiled a real smile this time, one that didn't need to defend itself. I don't want anyone to take sides, I told her. I just want people to stop rewriting the truth. Rachel nodded. That kind of strength. Not many have it. That night, I returned home and walked into my familiar space, the cozy living room. The soft scent of wax melts the tidy bookshelf, and a stillness that wrapped around me like a thick quilt on a cold winter night. It was my peace, and this time, I wasn't giving it up for anyone. The house hadn't changed. I still lived alone, and I'd never been more grateful for it. I don't have everything. I've probably disappointed some people, but I didn't lose myself. I'm no longer the Mia from years ago, the one who always nodded, always gave in, always let others' feelings take priority over her own autonomy. Now I have a small house I built with my own hands, and I have a boundary clear, firm between real love and manipulation, disguised as family loyalty. Mia's story isn't just a family drama. It's a lesson in boundaries and self-respect. In a world where women are so often expected to sacrifice, Mia chose to protect the peace she paid for with her youth. She wasn't heartless. She simply stopped carrying the burdens others refused to own. Sometimes, real love doesn't mean giving endlessly. It means having the courage to say no when saying yes would mean losing yourself. What do you think about Mia's decision? Was she too firm, or was she simply protecting what truly matters? Leave your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more honest and powerful stories about family and life.